Hello everyone and welcome to Bible Gilgal. Our principle is understanding the Bible through the Holy Spirit, know the Holy Spirit through the Bible.
All right, let's just jump right in. When you think of the tabernacle, you probably have a very specific image in mind. It's this iconic, sacred tent, right? The blueprint for it was supposedly delivered straight from God.
And this is probably the image you're picturing. Yeah, this one. It's everywhere, in books, movies, you name it. A classic rectangular tent. For centuries, this has been the image. It feels like a settled fact, doesn't it?
But here's the thing. What if that image, the one we all know, is completely wrong? I mean, what if for thousands of years we've been reading the blueprint all wrong?
So that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. We're looking at a completely different, you might even say radical, way of seeing this ancient structure.
And wow, just look at the difference here. On the left, you've got the familiar boxy tent. But on the right, it's something else entirely. It's this huge, circular, dome-like structure. Kind of like a massive yurt, It just feels so much more alive.
Now hold on. This isn't just someone's artistic interpretation. The people who support this stone model, like the researchers at a group called Project 314, they make a pretty bold claim. They say the traditional rectangular design has, get this, over 119 transgressions. Basically, 119 ways it violates the original biblical text and even the laws of physics.
And their biggest piece of evidence? Well, it's a kind of mathematical secret. A code they believe was hidden in the text on purpose.
So, to make their case, these researchers basically had to ignore all the paintings and traditions we've seen for centuries. They went straight back to the source code, you could say, the super precise measurements for the tabernacle's curtains that are laid out in the book of Exodus.
And they asked a really simple but brilliant question. They said, okay, what if you don't join the curtains side by side, like you would for a flat roof? What if you join them end to end to make a giant ring? What number do you think you'd get when you add up all those lengths?
The answer is 314. Now, I know what you're thinking. 314, so what? But if you know anything about math or geometry, that number is like a giant flashing neon sign.
Why is it such a big deal? Because 314 is basically pi, 3.14, just without the decimal point. If you have a circle with a circumference of 314 cubits, what's its diameter? It's exactly 100 cubits. And guess what? That number, 100 cubits, also shows up in the text. For these researchers, that is no coincidence. It's a divine fingerprint, a hidden message pointing directly to a circle.
Okay, but the case doesn't stop with the math. It gets even deeper when you start looking at the language, the way things were woven, and just simple, practical engineering.
And this is where it gets really cool. The language itself seems to back up the math. The Hebrew word used for how to place the pillars, saviv, it literally means to encircle or surround. And there's this weird phrase, 50 by 50, which makes no sense for a rectangle. But for a circle, it's a perfect description of two 50-cubit radiuses. Even the word for the curtains themselves implies a kind of quivering material, something pulled tight, under tension, exactly what you'd see in a dome, not some saggy wall on a rectangular tent.
Really, the whole thing comes down to this one simple change in how you put it together. The traditional idea is you stitch the long sides of the curtains together to make a big flat blanket for a roof. But the dome theory says, no, you join the short ends together. And that one tiny change in assembly completely transforms the structure from a flat, weak roof into a powerful, continuous ring. And when you think about it from a practical standpoint, it just makes so much more sense. A rectangular tent out in the desert, it would be an absolute nightmare. It's heavy, the corners are weak points, and a flat roof, it would just collect rain and you'd have leaks and mold constantly. But the dome, it's like a marvel of ancient engineering. It's way lighter, it's super strong because of the tension, it handles wind perfectly, and rain just rolls right off. It's built for life on the move.
And listen, this isn't just a cool idea they drew up. They've actually built it. They've made physical scale models, and guess what? It works. The tension-based dome isn't just possible, it's strong, stable, and it fits the biblical instructions perfectly.
So we've got the math, we've got the language, we've got the engineering. But the argument for the dome goes even bigger than that. It goes cosmic. The idea is that the shape of the tabernacle wasn't just practical, it was deeply symbolic. It was meant to be a model of the entire universe.
Okay, so to get this, we have to kind of put ourselves in the mindset of the ancient Hebrews. How did they see the universe? Well, for them, the world was basically a flat, round disk, and over the top of it was a giant, solid dome called the firmament. And this dome held back the waters of the heavens.
And this model right here, which is based on descriptions in Genesis, really helps you visualize it. You've got this cozy, protected world tucked safely underneath this huge celestial dome.
And that brings us to this really fundamental idea in a lot of ancient religions. As it is in heaven, so on earth. The idea that your most sacred space on earth should be a direct reflection, a little mirror of the heavens.
So if you put it all together, the tabernacle suddenly becomes so much more than just a tent for God to hang out in. It becomes a physical model of the entire universe. The circular courtyard, that's the flat earth. And the giant dome over it, that's the firmament, the dome of the heavens. It was literally the cosmos in miniature.
So, where does all this leave us? Well, it leaves us with a really fascinating and, pretty contentious debate that is far from over.
Let's just quickly recap the two sides here. You've got the traditional model, a rectangular box based mostly on historical tradition. Then you have the revisionist model, a circular dome based on a mathematical code in the text itself, backed up by linguistics and engineering. One is kind of static, like a mini-temple. The other is this dynamic, living model of the cosmos.
What this new theory really does is throw down a challenge to thousands of years of tradition. It suggests that the rectangular image we're so used to might just be a historical error, an idea that got shaped later on by the square temples of the Greeks and Romans, instead of reflecting the original Hebrew text and their nomadic lifestyle.
And so it leaves us with this one kind of mind-blowing question. Could it be that a mathematical secret, a code hidden in plain sight in an ancient text, could actually rewrite our entire understanding of one of history's most sacred structures? Was the key not just faith, but also a math problem that's just been waiting all this time to be solved?
We are Bible Gilgal. The video is over. May the Lord bless you all.